Gather round. It's time for your Real Estate Chalk Talk with the Hittner Group at Coldwell Banker Burnett. Listen closely as your coaches discuss the culture, the economy, and the political scene, and how it affects your home and your real estate investments. Real Estate Chalk Talk is where you learn the science of buying and selling real estate and the art of living in your home. Your education begins in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, welcome to the program. This is your Real Estate Chalk Talk, coming to you from the Hittner Group at Coldwell Banker Realty. HittnerGroup.com, Hittner Group, all one word. HittnerGroup.com, 612-627-8000. That's 612-627-8000. Give us a ring-a-ling-a-ling. We'd be happy to have a chat with you about your real estate needs, and that first conversation, of course, is all with no cost and absolutely no obligation. We are in the midst of summer. Boy, it's when people have their homes on the market in the summertime, it's can be kind of challenging because you got the kids around, you got summertime activities, baseball games, all that stuff going on, and you got to keep the place all policed up, nice and ready to go. I just sent an email out this week to our past clients, just giving them some tips and tricks how they can keep their place looking sharp and looking good during that time when it's on the market. And there are plenty of houses on the market. We're out showing houses last night, actually. And just to give us a little intro of what's going on today, we're going to have Brian Boilers on the program, the Regional Vice President of Coldwell Banker Realty, big time, big shot. So we're going to talk to him about what's going on in our real estate market. What's on in the market right now is, sold this last week in the 7-county metropolitan area. We had about 1,000 properties sell and close. That's opposed to 1,200 a year ago during that same week. Pending sales at new properties have just come off the market this week, the same about 1,000, and that's about the same as a year ago. So it's nice to see that number kind of recovering or marrying up to last year's sales. Listings are still down though, kids. We got about 5,400 properties on the market in the 7-county metro as opposed to 6,000 some last year. That's about 11% off. That's an improvement over what it was previously, because we were running 25-30% off before, and now it seems like we've got a few more opportunities coming on the market, so that's the good news. And prices seem to have stabilized. I just did a little number crunching this week and sent that out as well in a video, and we have the median sale price as of the end of June was $350,000 in the 7-county metro, $350,000. And last year, end of June, it was $350,000. Interesting, same. So you think, oh wow, that's not good. There's been no increase. But once the interest rates started ramping up last year, it really had an impact. And so median sale prices actually went down. So they went down in July, down in August. They were going down. So now that they've come back up, I see that as a recovery. So we've kind of absorbed, in my opinion, the interest rate shock, I think. And
because there was a little dip, you said, right?
There was a dip.
You said there was a little dip and we've recovered, so there's been this little bell.
So we've had a nice increase then in values. And then I just read this morning, the first 15 days of June, or of July, it's like a 1.5% price point uptick. So I think I think that we'll find that at the end of the year, we're going to be in that 5% or so appreciation for single-family homes, existing single-family homes year over year. I think that's probably about where it's going to land, which is like wonderful. That's sustainable. It's historical, maybe even a little bit better than historical. Now, it's all local because you've got some neighborhoods that are suffering, and you've got some neighborhoods that are doing great. And that's why you need to call and check on your neighborhood to see how you're performing, if that's something that you have an interest in doing. So now we got that part of it out of the way. Now I want to find out what's really going on. And so that's why we've asked Brian to come in. So first of all, can you just explain from your position standpoint? Now you managed an office for a couple, but you've been in the business for a long time, and as an agent, as a manager, and now you're the regional vice president. What is the responsibilities of a regional vice president within our organization?
It's pretty broad. It's probably the most broad. It is definitely the most broad position I've ever had. When we're selling, you can focus. You're focused in certain areas, and then managing a branch, you're kind of focused in that one area. I go across 24 offices, about 2,000 of our sales associates like Keith, and my job is really on the side of performance of our agent population, performance on our managers, the offices that are there.
What's that mean?
Well, how can we, whether it's our learning environment, whether it's training, it's being, adapt to the market that we're in right now. So a lot of education, I would say. And then obviously running our local operation here, making sure that we're performing well, that our agents are up to speed on what's going on with the marketplace.
I'm sure you're involved in recruiting as well, right?
Yes.
So what's the pitch for Coldwell Banker versus, you got a lot of the big boxes, big box brand, which you'd be one of them. Yeah. What's the draw to CBB?
Well, there's many models, and I've been one to say many times, like, competition's amazing. And we have 3,000 plus brokerages in the state of Minnesota, anywhere from the one
3,000?
the one person broker to
no way.
Firms like ours that are legacy brands. When I say about legacy brands, we've been around for 116 years, so we kind of know what we're doing. Really high quality, high touch. We believe in providing a lot of service and value to our consumers, and also to our agents who are consumers as well, making sure that we have products and tools that are relevant, marketing, training, all of that, making sure that we're guiding people to do the practice correctly. And so there's lots of different models, lots of great firms out there. We're just really, really focused in that area.
That's good.
So do you find that just from an agent standpoint or a broker standpoint, the consumer tends to, we find, put us all in one pot, really homogenized down to a commodity. And how does Coldwell Banker then, and other major brands, because these guys, and so do I, how do you differentiate? What's your unique selling proposition as opposed to a micro brand or a mom and pop shop or even a medium sized company? What's the advantage?
Well, our value proposition really comes around making sure that we have quality associates, that our team is educated, that they're able to go out and practice real estate in a professional way. That's number one. We don't take everyone. We want the best. And so we focus on that area because we've kept the consumer at the center of the transaction. So meaning that in many cases, you can have firms that might be really focused only on the agent and the agent's production, which is very important to us. We want to make sure we do that. It's one of my key roles. But also making sure that the consumer is part of that. So what I mean, whether it's the marketing that we do, the exposure of our listings, making sure they're hitting everyone. I used to explain it this way, Keith, when I was even selling real estate. It's like a tool belt, right? Screwdriver, a hammer, tape measure, really great tools, but can you use them for every project? We don't know, Keith, you don't know where your next buyer is coming from. And it's not fair to our consumer to just use the 3 tools or only equip our agents with the 3 tools. We need our tool belt to be full for no matter what the project is, what's in front of us. And that's fair. So you can be in a really great market, and to cut back on what you're doing to market or expose that property is not fair to the consumer. You should be using every tool you can to be able to maximize their return in the shortest amount of time with the least inconvenience to them.
When I was before I actually got into real estate, we were flipping houses and doing that before I was licensed, and even back then, this is 40 years ago, it was Coldwell Banker, or maybe it was Merrill Lynch or whatever, whatever generation it was back then. But I remember one house I built, and my former manager, I used to run a bunch of garden centers, and my manager left us to get his license and sell real estate, and he went to work for Coldwell Banker. And so we had him sell our house that we had just built, and it was, when you're choosing the company, Coldwell Banker always just had the reputation of being, well, these are the professional guys.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
a little bit better.
Yeah, just the the professional guys and the better educated and more trustworthy and all of that versus all the other companies. It's always been that way. And a lot of people have tried to encroach on that a little bit, but when you've got 117 years head start, it's kind of hard to beat on that. When we come back, I want to find out about your viewpoints on the state of the market as it stands, and the state of the market for the agent and the consumer, if we can, when we come back. This is your Real Estate Chalk Talk, 612-627-8000, 612-627-8000. We'll be back with Brian right after these messages. Hey, welcome back to the program. This is your Real Estate Chalk Talk, 612-627-8000. That's 612-627-8000. We're here in the studio with Brian Beaulieu, Regional Vice President of Coldwell Banker Realty, and we're just talking about the market now. And I'm curious about what your take is on what's going on in the marketplace. It's changing. We've got lots of consolidation going on and all that. What's the impact on that then for global companies like Coldwell Banker or Anywhere Real Estate, global companies, global brands, and how is that different from a regional company?
Well, I think, one of the big things that are happening right now with the marketplace is you need to know what you're doing. You need quality folks, you need quality guidance because the market's really changed. It's shifted. And when I mean shifted, we can look back from the Great Recession going the last 13, 14 years and then seeing what happened in 2020, right? So we've been literally in a shift since then. So we look at some of the stats you brought up at the beginning, and I tend to look at like a 16-county metro area, and we're down 17% in new listings. We're off 25%. This is now rolling 12 months, right? So we're off 25%. This is year over year now. If you go back last year to 2022, in the first half of the year, it was amazing. It was on fire, right? So we're sitting in a really interesting time. And so when you look at whether it's a brokerage or agent, quite frankly, we represent the same. We're partners with our agents. And quite frankly, nationally and local, again, you come right down to the neighborhood, right? You mentioned at the beginning being very educated on the neighborhood that you're in. It's all different, but across the country, all dealing with a similar challenge, and that's all around inventory. And there's a lot of factors to the inventory thing, but making sure that you have quality when you're out there trying to market and expose the properties and network them.
So you're in touch with the higher ups. I mean, you're one of the guys that are in the meetings, in the meeting room when the company is talking about, geez, guys, what are we going to do about this? Because what's the end? What's the play? How do we address this? How do we adapt? What is that? I mean, what is going to change that inventory issue? I mean, to me, I see it as a pretty structural thing, and we're looking at a decade of shortage. And then, so how does that happen? Kelvin's company is hoping for high interest rates so that many smaller companies, that's the truth.
Yeah. Truth.
So smaller companies will wash out,
Yep.
And because they don't have the staying power. And they'll just go away, and then they'll be left, and then things will recover, and they'll be in a sweet position. Is there a similar viewpoint?
I don't know if I'm wishing anything other than...
I don't know if I'm wishing either sometimes.
I mean, it's just the reality.
Just reality.
But are we built for a market like this? Yes.
Yeah.
I've said this. When you're in a tough market, the cream rises to the top. And when you're in a market where things can sell without having to, again, using one of the 3 tools instead of the 25 tools, right? Everyone looks amazing in a market like that. We're built for this. So I don't say I'm excited about the fact that we're in a shifting. We're just equipped for this type of market. And so what are we talking about? Making sure that we have the most equipped, talented professionals on our team. And that's our job, right? My job as your partner is to be here and equip you, to be prepared, to be watching out for anything that might be coming around the corner, so that when you're sitting with your client, that you can provide the best service, the best marketing, all of the things you need to do to get that home the best value.
What do you see as the biggest threat right now to the industry, to the consumer, and to the agent broker?
Well, it's really around this inventory, interest rates, inflation. I mean, that's really the biggest threat right now at this moment. When you're down so significantly in inventory, and again, I'll ask you, Keith, do you see any time in the real near future that we get a flood of inventory?
No.
And we've been in this. I spoke 10 years ago at a meeting about, I had read an article about, could someday we be out of inventory?
Right.
And I would say over the last few years, we are out of inventory.
We're pretty much out.
Yeah. 16 county metro, there's 6,600 and some change.
Wow.
If you take the 13 county metro going back 14 years, we are at about 38,000. Now, we have more housing stock in those locations.
Wow.
So when you look at that, we are out of inventory. If you look at, we're shortage, I think across the country, around 320,000 properties. If you look at what a household income of 75,000 could afford. So just 5 years ago, that same group, household of $75,000, 50% of the houses on the market they could afford. Today they can afford 23% of them.
Mm-hmm.
So our biggest threat right now is around that affordability.
But
and
builders
inventory.
aren't building affordable homes.
They're not, and why would you?
Right.
They're not building affordable homes for purchase. So, I mean, they're building homes,
Yep,
but
they're
if you
building
and
homes.
I and most of the public were out there and we had a plot of land, we're going to put the one up that there'd be enough demand for that we could get the most profit, right?
Sure,
I mean,
you're going to
that's-
maximize the yield
Yeah.
on that investment.
Absolutely. And so
Ah.
what you're seeing right now is mass amounts of inventory for rent. Even just in our district here around, we're in Egan right now, right around
Right.
here, you can go in whole neighborhoods that are for rent, single family,
New build.
new build.
Single family homes.
Single family
Yeah.
for rent, new build. And so, and you say, why would that be? Well,
Right.
they can put these houses closer together. They can obviously it's
Yeah.
money, but they have a plot of land. And this is a big issue nationally. And again, this all ties around the greatest threat is,
Right.
it's affordability. It's the amount of inventory we have. So when you look at that for rent, a lot of that of big institutional money.
Yep.
When you look at that, I'm just thinking back, and there were apartment buildings built that were built as condominiums, and then they couldn't sell them, so they rented them. And then a lot of those are still in place because the cash flow from that rental property is so good. But they can at any time decide that they're just going to sell them. With a single-family home neighborhood, when you've got a single-family home neighborhood with 300 houses in there that are all rentals, think of how easy that would be then to convert that to cash by just putting a for sale sign in the front yard. So I mean that's pretty liquid and they can time it because the things are just a cash cow. I mean, they're just throwing money into the account every single month. It's the oldest story on the planet. Is you want to be a millionaire, buy $1 million house, and have somebody else pay for it. So, what about then? There are so many things that I've seen over the last 40 years of how the dynamics of real estate has changed. It went from being, just some people out there who needed up to buy a house to raise their family, and there was a broker, with agents that helped them find that property, and you're putting, buyers and sellers together, helping families, move on with their. Now we've got these global money machines that have entered into the market. They see all this activity. A third of our economy is based on that transaction, and what leads up to it and what happens, immediately following it. What impact I see that as a threat.
Absolutely.
It's like, what impact is that with these companies that come in, foreign money coming in, either buying property and developing it as rentals, for one thing simple, or creating entities that they seem to be, let's try to digitize and automate and change how properties are bought and sold. How is that consumer going to be affected with that?
Yeah, well, it's a huge question, and it used to have to have logic for things like this to make sense. You can't actually, when you look over the last decade or couple decades, the amount of money out there just funny money is insane. Trillions of dollars funds. And some of us have those. They're in our, right? So we have to look at that. And
they're in our retirement accounts.
They're in our retirement accounts, but they're willing to take loss over a decade.
They've never made money.
Exactly, but someday they will, or they can. Like you said, you can convert rental in income. The number one owner of multifamily is you and I. I mean, it's the person that owns 2 or 3 or 4 rentals. That's still the case, but the big shift was this institutional money that came in, maybe iBuyer programs or situations where Invitation Homes was the number one owner of housing, ever in history. Thousands and thousands of houses. And so that's this kind of fake money. It's this money that's over here that they bought tons and tons of houses. There's a lot more of those, and I was talking to someone probably 6-9 months ago, and they said one of the biggest shifts they're actually seeing is regional players like that. We've been so worried about institutional money, this, from out of the country or even in the country. Doesn't make any difference. Big hedge funds. Now it's really coming down to these more regional players. There was some players in one of our markets here around the Twin Cities that if anything was under $350, they would purchase it. So they had just went out and found a fund with $20 million.
They just went to town.
Some doctors and some lawyers and some people. Everyone threw in some money, and they just started buying property to rent, and then ultimately probably sell. But whatever their plan
buying
is.
to rent and hold, I understand. The buying for the purpose of flipping and reselling, to me that model never did make sense. And on a case by case basis, maybe we'll talk more about that when we come back from break. This is your Real Estate Chalk Talk, 612-627-8000, 612-627-8000, and we'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. This is your Real Estate Chalk Talk. HittnerGroup.com, HITTNER Group.com at Coldwell Banker Realty. All right, so we were talking when we went out to break. We were just talking about iBuyers, just kind of touched on a bit. I just want to explore that a little bit because I never understood what the point was for like the Zillow Homes and some of these companies, Open Door, Redfin, who are buying houses and then putting some paint on, fixing them up, and selling them, and selling every single one of them at a loss. I just like.
But was everyone at a loss?
Oh yeah, I mean they lost. That's why Zillow quit, because they couldn't figure out how to make money. Open Door is still doing it, and they're still losing money on every single house that they sell. I just don't understand the why of it. Do you have any insight on that, or why are they doing that?
I think for the history of real estate, there have been companies trying to quote unquote disrupt the marketplace, and I actually am okay with that fact. Like, we want to take the pain points out of real estate. Real estate isn't easy. When you start from the spot of I want to purchase a house to getting it closed, there's a lot there, which is great job security for you, right? Because there are so many things that could come up. And I think when you look from an outsider, and again, most of these companies that you'd reference, they're institutional companies. Most people probably have never sold a house in their life, maybe purchased a couple, right?
Right.
And so it looks very simple from the outside. And how do I practice real estate? Like, I went online, I found the property, they went there, wrote an offer, and we closed, right? That's oftentimes what a consumer might think as or see, right? That's their experience. And I talk about this all the time. Our job is to make it look that easy, right?
Right.
Why should you lose sleep at night? That's our job, is to lose sleep at night. We work 24/7, right? That is our job, to go about do that. So from the outside, I think there's a lot of people that say, let's put some money together and we can simplify this with technology. And in some ways, yes, we'll be doing a better job as an organization. We're striving to make sure that we take those pain points in the middle and make it easier. In the mortgage side, there's a lot of things we could be doing with appraisals and stuff to make this stuff, and which has already been happening, that we can kind of move this thing. We're stuck a little bit in that we have to deal with the county and the state and a lot of regulations, right? But if we can clean up a lot of that stuff, we can take the pain points out. So I think there's a lot of organizations that have a lot of money that think, boy, we put a cool tech stack together, and we can make this really easy. And in some cases, they've been okay. I reference the divorce situation or the death situation. In some cases, there's some people say, I can't deal with it. I don't have the time and ability to. But it's a very small percentage of people that are willing to give up maybe 20% of their equity, right?
And that's
Very
at the end of the day is about what it is too.
Yeah, you get anywhere from 13 to 20%. That's why you look at
that's the haircut you take when
Yeah.
you're doing some of the iBuyer stuff.
oftentimes, yep. If you
Really?
took the averages, yeah, it depends
crazy.
on area, etc. We haven't had a ton of them in our locale because it's really hard for people who are outside of here to purchase real estate in Minnesota. We have things like snow and weather and other things that are
Right.
hard to manage a
Yep.
property if you have to fix them up and get them
Right.
cleaned. But they have. I heard a stat about a year ago that in Arizona, 50% of the buyers looked at iBuying first. Now, just a small percentage actually went that way because it didn't make sense.
Right.
Right.
Wasn't making any
But
sense.
it's a
So-
draw. It's a marketing draw.
It's a marketing
right?
draw. So at the end of the day, most people doing it are trying to
Right.
get the lead, turn the lead around, and get it over there. Now,
Yeah.
Open Door is still in business. Zillow was doing iBuying. They got out of the business. Open Door is the largest. They always have been the largest. And I think OfferPad's still around. And there's probably a couple others that have kept their iBuying that maybe made a little bit of profit. So on each sale, like very, very, very small amount. Now none of them. If they have any inventory left, everyone is going at a loss. So how can they sustain that? A lot of money. Partnerships. You'll see Zillow now has a partnership with Open Door, and they used to be,
Rivals.
fierce rivals,
Yeah.
right? And so that's it.
Everybody starts to say, never mind.
Where do they make
Yeah.
it up? You know where they make it up? They make it up in convincing a consumer that this is a great opportunity. The call comes in, then it gets sold back, and hopefully they make money on the mortgage or the title or the
Yep.
right. So
Yep.
they try to line it up that way versus saying, why don't we start with the professionals and then go the other way? If there's a way to do it, consumer could come to Keith and Calvin and
Right.
say, I want to purchase real estate right now, and you guys could offer the same exact thing with the
Right.
same company, but give them and distinguish the difference between if you sold it in more of a traditional manner versus selling it in iBuyer or
Well, we did the same thing in 1992. I mean, we had a thing called we had big yellow ugly signs we put in front of the house that said "Buy this house and I'll buy yours."
Yeah.
And I had a great big line of credit, and someone bought the house. I buy their house from them. But it was there was costs going in. There's holding costs. There's fix-up costs. There's a couple of recording sides to it, and all that was deducted off of what was then a very realistic market value of what that house was worth in its current condition. So a few people took advantage of it because they just, like you said, they just didn't want to deal with it, and it was easy, and they didn't have to clean up, and we would do everything, but not very many. But it made that phone ring.
Yeah.
The phone really rang. I have a question about some of these lawsuits that are out there. It's in the news. Everybody knows about it. There's everybody sues everybody. And sometimes there's like conflicting lawsuits. So the buyers are suing because they think they got taken advantage of. The sellers are suing because they think they got taken advantage of, which to me means probably nobody got taken advantage of if both people think they got the short end of the stick. But what is the origin of these lawsuits, and what is it that they're hoping to accomplish? Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, we as an industry we have 1.6 million realtors across the country, right? And everyone practices pretty independently, and there's brokerages, etc. And I think in some cases you can look at these lawsuits coming out saying, again, we can go back to what we said before. A consumer may look at real estate and say this is just easy until they run into the issue with the well, or they have the zoning problem, or the easement, or the encroachment on their property, right? These are the things that we deal with in almost every transaction, multiple situations that we have to kind of fix, right? So it looks easy. So I think from the outside, we practice real estate in the United States differently, at least how compensation has worked versus other parts of the country. Other parts of the country.
Other parts of the country?
Other parts of the world. Thank you, Calvin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Other parts of the world, other countries practice very, very differently than we do here. And that you'd go to a seller and say, here's what my commission is.
Okay.
And that's it. You're working with one side of the commission. In the United States, we've always, going back in the history of real estate, a seller typically is negotiating what a commission would be and then what the payout to a buyer's broker is. And it's a really efficient system.
Yes, it is.
If you were to put the two side by side, say Australia versus the United States, and look at that and say, well, it's way more expensive to sell real estate here for someone to be able to purchase real estate. Even might be the argument, Keith, you brought up. And I would argue the opposite. It's a very efficient system. If you look at the number of buyers that are coming in that would not have the capital to purchase a home, would be significant if that wasn't propped up a little bit by the commissions on the other side. Now, why are there lawsuits? Well, maybe as an industry, some people haven't practiced it appropriately, disclosed appropriately how that functions and how that works and what determination the seller has and how that dollar goes and is compensated to a buyer's broker.
And there are companies, though, that are out there still doing the flat, we've talked about that, the flat fee, all that kind of stuff, too. So where do you think some of this stuff fleshes itself out?
What do you mean by that?
Where do you think the lawsuit ends, saying buyer has to, like now if I'm a buyer, I'm supposed to be paying my own commission to my buyer's agent, right?
Yeah, that could be a scenario we run into, and quite frankly, and that's okay. In my opinion, I think it's okay for...
I think it would crush the market even worse.
Well, it's okay to give people choice.
Yeah.
I guess that's where I'm saying.
Okay.
I don't know that it'll change. And in parts of the country where this kind of tie-in wasn't there, where the seller pays the something to the buyer's broker, in parts of the country that's been in practice and nothing changed. And so the argument could be said is this is such an efficient way to practice real estate and how to purchase and sell that it's not going to shift, that it's okay.
I don't even see where the argument comes from. I mean, to me, it's like when I'm sitting with a seller, he says, okay, I want to sell this house. What do you think it's going to cost me to sell a house? Well, okay. Well, I've got to do, the work that I have to do. I have to market the property and such. So it's going to cost, this fee, whatever that percentage is, or flat fee or whatever. This is what it's going to cost. Nobody asks, well, how are you going to spend the money? They don't even ask.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean? How am I going to spend the money? I'm going to, build websites. I'm going to market the property. I'm going to entice other agents to come in with their buyers. I'm going to do all this stuff. That's how I'm going to spend the money.
Right.
Okay. Some of that, we've got a system for it. Works really well. We actually publish what we're going to pay the other guys so that they know, and then that's just part of the marketing costs. That's part of the marketing. So if you want to not run ads. Now we're running out of time. If you want to not run ads, then maybe I can reduce my fee a little bit because we're not going to run ads. If you're going to not pay out the other side, well, then I can reduce my fee a little bit. But you're not going to get the result. You're not going to get the result. So isn't that what you want, is the result?
Ultimately, yes.
We'll pick it up when we come back from break. This is your Real Estate Chalk Talk. 612-627-8000. We'll be right back.
But we're going to wrap.
Money in the bank.
Rates are good. Pretty exciting. You know why? Free money. You understand what I'm saying?
Hey, welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. This is the big money segment of the program. That's the one everybody's been waiting for. Calvin Kamick.
They listen through everything else just to get here.
That's right.
So it's good. Well, let's talk about the money side, and then we'll get back to Brian and our conversation on what's going on and how to sell properties and all that good stuff. So on the money side, real quick, we had a kind of a volatile week this past week where rates went up and came back down nicely last couple days. So, and down nicely means it doesn't start with a 7, right? And we were, at the beginning of the week, we were mid-7s, and it was the highest interest rate environment since 2002, which in January is when I came into the business. So we've literally run full circle. 21 years later, I'm back to where we started, so I got 21 more years to run this thing out.
Yeah, you probably get another dip sometime.
Yeah, I got to hang in there for one more.
One more.
One more big dip. But it's crazy that you're quoting rates this past week, and when you look, and you and I talk about this a lot. I mean, when you look at what a par rate is, just like what would you really charge? It was literally 7.99, 7.875. So then back in the day, everybody charged a discount or an origination fee. Back in the day, it's like, oh yeah, it's always one orig. Like you didn't even talk about it. Then we got in this era where it's like, oh my gosh, you can't charge an origination fee, and we'd compete with everybody, and you just make it. I mean, it was just it's all games. It's all games. So, so it was no origination, no discount, just what was your lender fees, right? So, but now we're full circle back where every deal you've got, everybody's charging a 1% discount, and it's a discount because it's going to buy that rate down so that even in this environment, you can go, okay, rates are 7, but we can get you to 6.99 or 6.875. They said this morning, some of the articles I'm reading, it's like rates back into the high sixes, and that means it went from 6.99 to 6.875. I'm like, you guys are just searching so hard for a headline.
And some good news.
Something good, right? And the jobless claims were 237,000 versus the 250 forecast. Producer price index was 0.1 versus 0.2. So they said, hey, inflation wasn't as bad as we thought. Now remember, and we've talked about that, it went up 30% now because you're year over year. Remember when it was the Trump administration versus Biden? You still had all this Trump, and you're like here, and now you're here. Well, now it's been Biden over Biden, and now it's like, well, all went up, and now the increases in it is great.
It's locked in.
So now it's like, oh yeah, we're doing so much better. Like, no, you're not. You're not. You're really not.
Right.
Because everybody took a 30% haircut on everything, and their wages stayed the same, right? So if everything's 30% more, and you make the same, if not less. But we're not going to go into that right now, but we could.
We could very easily.
We could very easily go into that. And then producer price year over year, 2.4 versus 2.6. So it seems to everybody that inflation is kind of coming in check a little bit, but then maybe not. And the Fed says, hey, we're going to go up at least one more time, maybe two. So you're going to see at the end of this month, we're going to go up another quarter. They've already said. Now, it used to be like, I wonder what they're going to do. Now they're like, we're going to.
Yeah, that's already built in.
Right. So now it's all
already
priced in.
It's already built in, yeah.
So now it's built into pricing already, which.
Are the next two built in then?
One. And now there's I just reading this morning, it was like there's an 80% consensus that there'll be two versus one. So some companies are starting to build in that second one right now, and so we'll see what happens. But I'll tell you, it's been an interesting. We had a good month, from a branch standpoint, from our region that I run here with Loan Depot. I mean, we still close 130 some transactions, and we had a really good month. July looks like it's stacking up really nicely, but applications are down a little bit now, and we're getting into that like summer little bit thing. I'm just like, man, we had our regional meeting late yesterday, and girl just talking to her, just like, hey, keep the momentum, keep the push, and we talk about the fact that we just got to triple down. You got to triple activity. So if I have 5 relationships with realtors, I need 15 because then I have a shot, right?
Right. At maintaining.
At being even, right?
Right.
But it's like you're tripling. You can't double activity. You got to triple your activity right now, and you just got to be consistent as heck. And it's really tough to be consistent in this market because it is tougher, right? You're doing 3 times the work for the same, and it's different, right? But it's okay, and it's going to weed out everybody. You talked in the first segment that we wanted rates to stay high, and while we don't, there is an element that when I'm talking to my bosses and stuff, they're like, hey, if we can run this 60 more days, we'll see a 40% of the companies will literally, they don't have enough money,
and they'll disappear.
And I look back, we talked about it the other night. I've been in the business 21 years. There's not one company left that I've worked for over that 21-year period. Right, other than now Loan Depot, which is the first or second largest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, got 1.1 billion in cash, and we're losing 40 to 50 million a month, but we have enough runway. Like that's what they're saying. Like we have enough runway. Like we can
weather this storm.
We can weather it.
Yeah.
It's a race to the bottom, but we're not. We still have more runway than you do.
Yeah.
So it's like. You're going to run out of money. We're not. We'll be okay. We'll pick up those people. So quite honestly.
And think of the market share that you'll have after, and that's what I was talking about before.
Right.
You think of the market share that you have after the storm has passed.
Well, that's the point. I mean, my boss was pretty fired up one day, and he was just encouraging, hey, this might not be the market for you. I mean, if you're struggling, he said, go drive Uber, go do something, but this is the market for the strong, the survivors. And we're talking to my guys and gals last night. Just saying, hey, this is the market for people that can survive in this. You just got to survive through it. We're going to be fine. And now it's like, same as you, it's kind of that we're trying to recruit too. You're recruiting in a bad market because at the end of the day, a lot of these companies are going away. A lot of these companies are raising. I mean, we had a really nice rally, and I'm talking to buddies in the industry saying our pricing stayed the same, our rates are the same, or they got worse. I'm like, nah, it's because everybody's building in margin because they're just trying to make it through, right?
Yeah.
So there's an element that you got to be with a big company right now. You have to be able to have runway, no different than probably not a great time to hang up your own real estate shingle,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Well, there is
You
always
know.
that flight to safety. Whenever things get turbulent, people go, they run to safety. Consumers do it, agents do it, or whatever. They go to the one that's been around for 100 years or the one that's the leader in the country because they know that, whoever those guys are that's running it, they're probably pretty good at it.
Yeah. So what problem did you solve this week? We talk about that every week. And
What problem did I solve this week? Well, I helped a seller in Texas on a property here come to grips with a pricing situation. So what we find when a market is turning like this, and it's been such a strong seller's market for so long, that's changing in many price ranges and in many communities where it's not that strong of a situation like that. You can't just throw something on the market and price it premium priced without doing some work, or that premium price maybe would fly at 3.5% interest or 4% interest, but it doesn't fly at 7% interest because people only have so much purchasing power, and that's a long conversation with some people sometimes, and so we help them. Help them come to that.
Brian,
reality.
what did you help this week? What problem did you solve this past week?
Ooh. I didn't know I was going to be asked that question, quite frankly. Probably as it related to, group of agents that I was just speaking with. I think for them, giving some insight on where we're headed, what we need to be doing to be prepared. As we move into the second half of the year. The first beginning of this year has been really tough, and so people's business has been off, and their psyche's off, and some of that. Looking forward now, I just had a text early this morning, probably 6 o'clock this morning, saying I just listed 3 houses this week, got some amazing sellers, we're moving forward, and I'm hearing that over and over. So I think really giving some insight on what we need to be doing to prepare to go into this next.
What do you think the next 6 months between now and the end of the year? What does it look like? Do you see activity increasing? Do you see more homes coming on the market? Like when you're I preach my message, you preach your message. What's your messaging right now?
Well, I think we're going to be looking at we'll see better headlines for one thing. Again, second half of the year, we're going to see year-over-year statistics getting better. So each week here, your listeners are going to start to hear we're a little better than we were a year ago. And again, we had such instability over the last few years that's going to be one of them. If we can get, we don't even need rates to go down. You were talking about 21 years, 24 years ago when I purchased like 7.25 or something, right? And the biggest thing is the delta. We come from 3 to 7. That's a big delta. We need consistency in rates. If we can just find consistency, there's been no 10-year period in history where we have not seen prices continue to go up. Our values of our homes right now are all better than they were when we came out of the Great Recession. Whether you purchased prior to that at the highest point, you're still way better off now. And so really talking to how are you educating your clients. One of the biggest things we need to do is get inventory on the market. We need people to think, let's get out of this. And we get that lock-in effect, right? I'm sitting at a 3% interest rate or less. And so, am I going to go and sell and move forward? Well, if you want to do it, there's still a great opportunity as we move forward. Are we going to be back at 3% interest rates ever? No. I mean, the reality is that was artificially held down for so many years, and so we're not going to see that again.
Thanks for tuning in. This is your Real Estate Chalk Talk, 612-627-8000, 612-627-8000. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
See you next week.